Churchill once said, "The gin and tonic has saved more Englishmen lives and minds than all the doctors in the empire." While we can't attest to the minds, the lives part is true. Quinine, the tonic in a gin and tonic, protected British colonizers from malaria, allowing them to continue pillaging and white man's burdening their way across the Indian subcontinent. So, you see, drinking can be good for you, says your borderline alcoholic friend, but why stop with G&Ts? In our current moment of turmeric tonics and açai everything, can healthy cocktails cure what ails you? Joining us is Amanda Schuster, the senior editor-in-chief of The Alcohol Professor and the author of New York Cocktails. Thanks so much for coming on Moment 2 BK.
Oh, thanks for having me.
First, let's drink to our health. You've brought some goodies. What do we got?
So this is one of the newest Copper and Kings gins, speaking of gin, out of Louisville, Kentucky. And what's really cool about it is it's apple brandy based instead of your typical grain based, and then it's got this cool infusion of hibiscus and rose and honey and all these yummy things. There's some grapefruit in there too, and some other fun botanicals. And it's still technically gin. It's got juniper, but it's definitely kind of straying away from what most people associate with the classic gin.
And it's this lovely pink hue.
Yes.
Was this like a Valentine's Day release, or?
I believe it was supposed to be, but I mean, this is definitely something that I'm looking forward to sipping more of in the springtime for sure.
All right, well, that's for you.
Thank you.
Let's get a little loose as we talk about healthy tonics.
All right, chin chin.
Yeah. So we're in a real, that's very nice.
Isn't it?
Subtle botanicals, I would say, but the rose comes through.
Yep.
So we're in sort of like a health and wellness moment where the idea is that you can drink your way to a healthier, detoxified body.
Yes.
I want to share a couple of cocktails that are currently on menus in New York. And I
fun.
should say, none of these, as far as I know, purport to make you healthier, but they do have like healthy ingredients. So, Jimmy at the James has a chicken hot toddy. The ingredients are Hendrick's gin, hot chicken stock, celery bitters, carrot, and parsley. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
At $24. I'm intrigued. This one is now off the menu because of the recent CBD ban, which we can talk about. But the Jade Fizz at Peachy's had pisco, moringa powder, which I didn't even know what that was, but our other guest told me that it was an Ayurvedic type root, maybe? CBD oil, yuzu oil, bok choy greens, and egg whites. And then there's one at the Wild Sun called the Garden Variety Margarita, which is a pretty straight-up margarita, except it's got kale ginger juice in it.
Oh, my.
So what do you think? Is this a trend that you are seeing as well? Are people pitching you healthy cocktails?
They certainly are. And what's disturbing about that is, you know, it's one thing if you're saying, okay, these drinks are flavored with these ingredients and they are flavored purposely to taste good, to elevate the drinking experience. But the pitches that I'm receiving are actually toting the health benefits of those ingredients in the drinks. And what you're doing is you're mixing these botanicals and herbs that supposedly have these, health benefits with a toxin. And it doesn't matter how much of that goes into it, it's still a toxin. It's like saying that a Big Mac is good for you because it has dehydrated cucumbers in it as pickles.
Right. Is there a most egregious PR pitch that you've received, or is there a specific alcohol or cocktail that you feel is particularly offensive?
Well, of course, you get most of this stuff in January, right?
Sure, dry January.
Right,
we all wrote our dry January piece.
Right, but these drinks aren't dry. They are mixed with actual base alcohols, all of them. And so that, to me, and I know of quite a few other people who would agree with me, this negates any sort of, beneficial property of, you can put as much wheatgrass as you want in your margarita. It's still a margarita. You're still drinking tequila.
Is there an argument to be made, though, that, say you're doing Red Bull and vodka, that if you do vodka with, beet juice, that has to be at least less bad for you?
No.
You're breaking my heart. You're breaking my 21-year-old heart. When I was 21, I worked in service on the Lower East Side, and we would go to the Stanton Social, which is now closed.
Oh, man.
But whenever I was feeling under the weather, I would order this green tea cocktail that they had, and it had like echinacea in it and green tea and honey. And I was like, you guys, I'm going to be fine by tomorrow because this is totally going to put me back on my feet.
Well, I mean, I think you can still, have those ingredients in the cocktail and enjoy it as a cocktail, but just remember you're also ingesting alcohol at the same time.
Right.
I know people who are getting a cold and they're like, oh, I think I'm going to have a daiquiri tonight because at least I'll have, the fresh juice in my
citrus.
drink. And you still are getting your citrus, certainly, but, it just depends on how many of them you plan on drinking.
What about, whiskey with lemon and honey? I feel like people drink that a lot when they have a sore throat.
Sure.
Any health properties there?
Well, okay, so that goes into a whole other realm where I think there are some health benefits to a toddy if you have one of them. I actually just came off of a terrible upper respiratory illness that hit me twice in January, went away and came back again.
It's probably dry January's fault, to be honest
absolutely,
with you.
Yes. Yeah. And there are some drinks that will definitely temporarily relieve symptoms. The same way that NyQuil will temporarily relieve symptoms. It's not going to cure you. It'll make you feel better for a little while. So, for instance, gin, we're back to gin again, is a very good anti-inflammatory. If you mix it with hot water and lemon, it not only is going to taste pretty good, maybe a little honey in there too, but it will temporarily help ease some of the inflammation in your chest and your nose and the things that are bothering you, and certainly doing that with a little bit of whiskey is probably helpful too. You just can't sit there and drink them all day as medicine.
Right. So maybe there is something to this chicken hot toddy. You've got your bone broth. Got some gin to take care of your symptoms.
Sure. If it's Jimmy at the James, it's probably Johnny Sweat's idea to come up with that drink, and he's a pretty talented guy. He's really good at coming up with flavor combinations. So I would imagine it tastes great, and at least if you're coming in from the cold, that's probably something that's very soothing. But is it going to be healthful for you? Probably not.
So Jimmy at the James also had a CBD cocktail.
Yeah. And they had one at Grand Republic, his other bar.
Yeah, I mean, CBD cocktails were popping up everywhere for a while. Yeah. And recently, there's been a crackdown, right? Because it's not FDA approved, so you can't put it in cocktails or in coffee or in food anymore.
Yeah.
Did you sample any CBD beverages while they were on the menu?
I have a lot to say about that,
please,
actually.
Please. The floor is yours. Have a drink.
I was really disturbed by that trend. Mostly because here you are taking a substance that is unregulated. Hey, let's put it in some alcohol. What could possibly go wrong, right? And the whole attraction to CBD was as an anti-inflammatory also, but something that relieves stress. Apparently cleared up zits. It helped. People have used it for all kinds of things. Anti-nausea. I mean, it's the property in marijuana when isolated that doesn't have any psychotropic benefits, so they say, but that will at least help make certain symptoms feel better. And people who have these symptoms, it's all kinds of symptoms, from backaches to toothaches to other things. The problem with it is that, first of all, there's no way of really truly measuring how much of that property is in the substance that you're tasting.
Anyone who's ever had a pot brownie knows this issue.
Right. There could be almost none. There could be way more than they say. The other thing is that to put it in alcohol, it has to be water soluble. To make it water soluble, it has to have an emulsifier. That ingredient is completely unregulated. You don't know how it got that way. And you also have to sweeten it with something because the stuff, let's face it, on its own will taste like plant farts. So you have to sweeten it with something, and people are probably going to stray away from putting sugar in it because they don't want to say, oh, well, now we've just put all these calories in your drink. So it's probably some sort of artificial sweetener that's could be plant-derived, could be chemically derived, but there are people who are allergic to them. And that ingredient doesn't have to be listed on the whatever brand that you're buying of that substance. So it's a really, to me, incredibly irresponsible marketing campaign and a very irresponsible ingredient to use in your drink until there are federal regulations that require every single ingredient to be on the label.
So that is one trend that you are happy to see we're hitting pause on.
Yes. Everybody's different. So different ingredients are going to affect people in different ways. You can't categorically say that something is beneficial to your health because it is to one person or a small group of people.
Right, right. And, with CBD, nothing has been tested or regulated at this point. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see what the FDA says, and I don't know, maybe it'll make a comeback.
Yeah.
So we're drinking this gin from Kentucky.
Yes.
And speaking of Kentucky, I wanted to ask you a little bit about these tariffs that have been imposed on Kentucky bourbon and other American spirits, and how that is impacting their export to other countries.
Yeah. Well, one person I talked to in depth about this was Scott Harris at Catoctin Creek, and one of the things he said, there are so many craft spirits in the U.S. right now that they're all kind of in competition with each other, and new distilleries are popping up all the time. So one of the things that he decided to do was to see if he could capture some of the European market, because the Europeans are so attracted, or had been so attracted, to American spirits, since to them it's a little bit of a luxury. It's an interesting commodity, and that was going pretty well. And then the tariff thing happened, and because this forces retailers and bar operators to raise prices so significantly, all of a sudden it just makes absolutely no sense to carry that product. And so they're just sitting in a warehouse right now. And people like Scott had been counting on that measure of the market for, part of their annual business. And that's just completely gone away.
So American craft spirits are taking a hit as a result of the
American craft
tariffs.
spirits are taking a hit. It remains to be seen what it's going to do to more corporate whiskey. I mean, is Wild Turkey really going to suffer with these tariffs? Probably not. I think bars are probably going to be, carrying Makers and Wild Turkey and Buffalo Trace and those brands overseas, just because everybody still wants them. They can raise the price and people will pay them. But if you have a craft spirit that's less familiar on your back bar and it's really expensive, that's going to be a problem.
Right, right. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.